when that announcement was made,
yes,
it was also released to where he had been and what he had done. What else was government supposed to have done?
You see, okay, have you noticed that when an Obama, for example, makes an appointment of someone as a president of the federal, what's that thing they call it, the own central bank, he says, I'm appointing so-and-so federal central bank. He has this background, but the reason we are bringing him on board is because this is where we are going. You see, there is a need. This is always a problem I've had with our government. Our government thinks that it is about facts. Opinions are as important to the people as the facts. And opinions are shaped by explanation, by telling us what it's all about. You're going to appoint somebody, say, secretary to the government. You say, so-and-so is coming as secretary to the government. He's been appointed because he's going to bring this to the government. You know, I've always said to people, the way Nigerians write CVs is about what I have done. It should be more about where we are going. That by the time we expect that this man will help shape up this, adjust this, and do this, then it does something to the people. It communicates to them that the decision there's a method to the madness. You understand what I'm getting at? There's a method to the madness. There's a reason of where we're going. We're not just appointing Tokes or Bayon to something. We appoint not because he comes on channels. We're appointing him because we expect he will bring this and this and this and this. So it means that automatically an expectation is raised. And that's part of what communication does fundamentally. And one of the #1 competencies of leadership actually is communication. And without communication, I mean, someone said you cannot blow an uncertain trumpet. People must have a clear idea and not have to guess for themselves. You see, because even when people guess for themselves, what you think is clear becomes unclear.
Absolutely. In fact, that is what we were talking about. We are saying that this week, you know, we had Alhaji Lai Mohammed and some other APC members, and we were talking about some achievements of this administration. Yes. And some that they have alluded to. We had to remind them that, look, even the president in a particular interview did say it will be dishonest of him to say that was done by him. Okay. It means that maybe the political party is still even in the dark as to what they have done by some members, not knowing. So who should be speaking to the nation and even to the party members so that they know what the government, their own government has done and what our government has done?
I think that's one area that the ruling party has to work out, because there is a fact that they're in government now. And the party has to be careful, because when the party speaks for government, the party itself does not exactly know everything that's happening in details in government. With all of the best intentions, it's not because of the party that is involved, basically. And somehow, they need to move out of the mode of being an opposition party. The opposition party is allowed to make errors. It's allowed to speak. And therefore, they need to begin. I mean, for example, yesterday, Lai Mohammed said something to the effect that the party did not make promises about meals in schools. And today, the vice president says they are working on how to get meals in schools. Now, those are two contradictory statements, because they did make the promises at the time. Now, that's why the party needs to actually slow down a little bit. And now let the action and those who are in the forefront of action be the main spokespersons speaking on behalf of what's going on. So what should the party then focus on? The party should focus on keeping its own party structure, having an internal system, and mobilizing the system. The party is not the government. The government of Nigeria, for example, if you go into the National Assembly, for example, the government of Nigeria, the National Assembly is made up of 56 or 57 APC members and 49 PDP members who are part of the Senate of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, whether they're in party or in opposition. That is the government of Nigeria that the people have voted. The states that voted PDP governors have governors of Nigeria, just as the APC states. So the nation is not an APC nation. The government was formed by APC, and they all agreed on the money. They should let the government, therefore, do their own work. And the politicians, because then you avoid these blunders, where it's as if the government is a house in disarray, which is what it's looking like. I'm not saying they are, but they need. But impression is as important as the reality.
So does that then suggest that, because that's a statement on the front page of Daily Times this morning, are they likely to end up working at cross purposes, because they'll meet and compare notes and say, look, this is our manifesto, this is what we set to achieve, this is why we were elected?
I don't think they work at cross purposes, because ultimately it's the president that determines what happens. The only problem is that they might affect their image if the issues are not sorted out as to who presents what we say we are doing. And if they don't sort it out, they will have a problem of credibility, and they will also have a problem of an ability to communicate with the people, because after a stage, it becomes predominantly propaganda. And the problem with propaganda is that it's good for winning elections. It's not good for running government. And that's a difference, significant difference.
Well, I guess that even that one will be subject to, because some people say that successful governments have also, engaged in some form of propaganda, especially when they're dealing with allies or dealing with external factors. Yes. But, let's leave that aside and look at what exactly is happening in the States. Are there any states so far that you would say have impressed you in terms of what you've seen? And, you can say there is some form of leadership direction here, or some states that are given example in terms of how to move forward.
To be frank, I think the states seem to all be caught up in the same lethargy we're having from the federal government. It looks as if all that everybody is telling us, from the federal government to the state government, is that we have financial difficulties. We have money problems. And the truth about it is, we had money problems before the election. The money problems didn't come up. The price of oil has dropped over almost a year ago, basically. And when we appoint people...
And it keeps dropping.
It keeps on dropping, yes. Yeah. And it's sometimes going up a little bit. And it's probably not going to... a few days ago, the Chinese GDP went down, and that caused problems all over the world. So to assume that it's going to change, that's not the problem. The problem is with leadership. But I tell people that leadership is best known in dire circumstances. We celebrate Winston Churchill in England because England was under pressure World War II, and he made that speech about we'll fight them in the streets, we'll fight them on the hills, we'll fight them with our spoons, and he mobilized the nation that was under siege from Germany at the time. So everybody celebrates him. So when we look at it and all you hear are complaints, we have no money, we are struggling to pay salaries, we are doing this, and that seems to be somehow, there may be states that are doing okay, but unconsciously, they have filled the discussion space with the negatives. Everybody is spending too much time telling us what the past government did not do. Thank God, that's why they were voted out of office, and that's why you are voted into office. So stop telling us what they did not do. We knew, so we voted. Now you are in office, take responsibility and say, because we have this situation, this is what we are going to be doing about it. Of course, maybe part of the problem is also because we've created a system whereby leadership in governance think that is patriarchal. They think, therefore, is the amount of goodies they can distribute to the people as a sign of good governance. Whereas the real sign, in my view, of good governance is how much you mobilize the people themselves to want to begin to be part of a movement to change their environment.
Have you started seeing that sign?
I haven't seen much of that, unfortunately. And I think part of the reason is because there's very little understanding of doing that, because that has not been our focus. When people run for election, we're going to build 20 hospitals, we're going to build 300 this, we're going to do that. So we have carried over a mentality of a patriarchal government. Godfather, Big Daddy, government has all the resources. And in the process, we've also created an unfortunate image in the nation that government has an infinite access to resources, which it does not have. So everybody expects government to do everything. Everybody expects government to build all the roads. I told somebody a few weeks ago that if it was at Dekunle Ajasin University, we had to address the management. And I was telling them that if the government decides that they will build all the roads in Nigeria, there will be no money for health and there will be no money for education.
What comes to mind here is how can they stand out? Everyone is keen into this government at the center. The government at the center is talking about probe. The states are equally talking about probing different people, even governors who handed over to them of the same party. Everyone is about probe. No one has been able to constitute a cabinet. How can anyone stand out in the midst of everyone having this bandwagon effect, which is not even positive?
Yeah, I think the only way around it is that somebody has to take the bull by the horn. I was talking with my colleague when I was coming. I said, in the days when America was having depression, there was a man who was supposed to be a change manager. His name was Al Dunlap. And he got a nickname Al Chainsaw Dunlap because companies would bring him in, and within a few days, half of the staff had been sacked. Cost cutting, cost cutting, cost cutting. After a stage, they discovered that his cost cutting seemed only temporarily to save the company, but the companies ended up collapsing all the same. Because even when you cut costs, you must it is, I was sharing with somebody, I said, it is not the weed that determines what we eat. It is what it's the seed you plant. So if you spend and you come out as a farmer and say, I managed to wipe out all weeds on my farm, you will still not eat. What matters is what did you plant and what did you take the weeds off from doing. Now, how does that translate what we're saying? If somebody will get up and say, this is what our government will achieve. This is what we are driving. And I'm a person who is anti-corrupt. Even in my business, I run a strong ethical operations in my business. I do that strictly. But at the same time, when corruption becomes your number one agenda, your number one agenda is supposed to be growth and performance. And corruption is the virus that inhibits the growth. Now, when you get it twisted, what happens is that you spend a lot of your time on your negatives.